We all know that today, as on 6th June, where we stand in COVID, every sixth case of COVID in the world belongs to India. We also know that any person who has kidney disease or who develops kidney disease in the hospital has got heightened risk of mortality, whether it is simple serum creatinine, whether it is AKI stage 1, 2, 3, the presence of proteinuria, hematuria, whatever the cause may be, he is more prone for mortality. We know the dialysis population is 5 to 20 times more vulnerable to get COVID, and the mortality is 16 to 32%, which is pretty high. Now, we all know that during this second wave of pandemic, this has been a standard prescription by most of the doctors. There are 13 items, everybody was getting this kit, which ivermectin, lopinavir, azithromycin, doxycycline, Limcy, zinconia, vitamin D, and so on. And these Limcy, zinconia, vitamin D were given that possibly they are immunity booster. Coming to the Government of India, Ministry of Ayush, this is the recommendation by Government of India, that 7 recommendation: drink lukewarm water, sleep for 7 to 8 hours, do yoga, gargling, consume amla or amla products. Food should be freshly prepared, and use of turmeric, ginger, jeera, dhania, and garlic. Now, what is the immunity booster which is being promoted by Government of India? This is what it is. You can opt for opinion 1, 2, or 3, along with last one, golden milk, which is half teaspoonful of haldi in milk. The options are either you consume Chyawanprash, or you take ashwagandha, or you drink kada plus golden milk. Well, this is, I think Ayurveda people know much more than that. Let's come to allopathy. The WHO recommends that food and nutrition during self-quarantine, as the photo shows, that take high protein diet, nuts, and fresh vegetables and fruit. This is what WHO recommends. Now, they again say proper nutrition and hydration are vital for your immunity. So how can you improve your immunity? What you need is good nutrition, that is high protein diet, and micronutrients, plus physical exercise. If you are able to do these 3 things, you can improve your immunity. Now, these are, again, how to boost immune system. These are the things available by most of the hospitals. Food rich in proteins, low in carbohydrate. Good share of fruits and vegetables, 5 servings, macro and micronutrients, daily exercise, sleep, hydration, and avoid smoking and alcohol. Well, these are the 3 main things. What is immunity? Let's come to the basic, because what it is. The immunity is of 2 types. One is an innate immunity, that is immediate immunity, rapid response, that is the skin, our secretions like tears, which has polymorphs, macrophages, dendritic cell, mast cell. That means anytime an organism enters the body, there is immediate phagocytosis. This is a rapid response. This is not specific or specialized. This is called innate immunity. The second is adaptive immunity, that is specific, and it gets remembered. So if a person gets exposed, again, the T cells specifically recognize this. This is broadly by CD8 and CD4 cells. Let's come further. What is adaptive immunity? If you say T cells They are cytotoxic cells and T helper cells. Now, T helper cells are further divided into T helper 1, T helper 2, T helper 17, and T regulatory cells. And they are producing different cytokines. Like T helper cell is producing interferon and IL-2, which has got antiviral and cellular response. T helper cell 2 is producing IL-4, 5, 13, humoral and anti-parasitic response. T17 producing against bacteria and fungi. And T regulatory cells, they also produce interleukin 10, which is anti-inflammatory. Now, these are, again, to simplify, T and B cells, CD4, CD8, and T helper cell, they are further divided. They produce different cytokines. And T and B cells also turn to memory cells where the memory persists for a long time. Now, what happens in kidney disease or end-stage kidney disease? Both anti-inflammatory interleukin 10 and pro-inflammatory cytokines are increased. All the three classes of PAM, that is pathogen-associated molecular pattern receptors, are affected. Monocyte and monocyte-derived dendritic cells show decreased endocytosis. The bactericidal capacities of polymorphs are reduced in the dialysis patients. T cell proliferation is decreased. So what is happening? That patients with end-stage kidney disease have got a dysregulated immune response. So there is alteration in the function of neutrophils, NK cells, macrophages, T and B lymphocyte, along with inflammation induced by the dialysis procedure itself. So therefore, there is a susceptibility to both viral and bacterial infection, especially in present reference to SARS-CoV-1-2 also. Now, the disturbance in ESRD can be again put down in a tabulated form: the pattern recognition receptor defects, the cellular defects, the complement defects, the defects in the T and B lymphocytes. Now, if you look at some of the micronutrients in CKD dialysis population, zinc, selenium, manganese, and sometimes thiamine are reduced. The other elements are not reduced. Now, what are the basic metabolic abnormality if we are talking of, let's say, AKI, or acute kidney injury, what Dr. Sunil Prakash beautifully explained today? There is protein catabolism. There is alteration of metabolism of specific amino acids. Peripheral insulin resistance is there. There will be hyperglycemia. There is a reduction of lipolysis, depletion of antioxidant system, and there's an induction of pro-inflammatory state and immunodeficiency. This is what is happening in our patients, COVID patients, once they are hospitalized. Now, this is only to say, in addition to that, there is protein energy malnutrition. Why there is protein energy wasting? Because I'll put to the next one, which will be easier. There is reduced protein energy intake due to anorexia. There is hypercatabolism. There is metabolic acidosis, reduced physical activity, reduced anabolism, comorbidities, and dialysis treatment. All these are again causing protein energy malnutrition. There's a beautiful review, are basically the guidelines which appeared few days back, the European enteral nutrition guidelines. And what they are recommending today, this is not for COVID only, this is relevant to COVID also. What they have recommended, that kidney function impairment has negative effect on carbohydrate, protein, and lipid metabolism, and it exerts a pro-inflammatory effect and has major impact on the antioxidative system. Medical nutrition therapy should be considered in any patient of AKI, AKD, or CKD with or without requiring kidney failure treatment who is hospitalized. When should this treatment be started? Nutrition therapy. It should be started after 48 hours of hospitalization. Why I'm saying after 48 hours? Initially, when a person is in stress, there is more energy production for initial 48 hours, so you do not require to give them more nutrition. And what is the definition that a person is not able to take adequate nutrition if the requirement is less than 70% of expected energy requirement? Now, what they recommend is that if a person is not able to take oral nutrition, logically, if it's a dialysis patient, he can go for intradialytic parenteral nutrition. And if not, then you have to look for alternative methods. Now, this is how to go about nutrition in our COVID patients when they are hospitalized. Start supplementation of calories after 48 to 72 hours of hospitalization if oral intake is inadequate. And the definition of inadequate is if it is less than 70% of the recommended energy expenditure. So that is what. If a person is non-critical ill patient, addition of, because normally we say 25 to 35 calories per kg body weight. So that is 10 to 12 calories per kg additional, and 0.3 to 0.5 gram protein per kg additional is adequate if it is a non-critical illness. You have to maintain a positive nitrogen balance because the mortality decreases with that. In critically ill patients, especially if on CRRT, protein intake can go up to 2 gram per kg. So try oral intake. If a person is not able to take 70 to 110% of desire, shift to enteral supplementation. If not tolerating, or you can't give, suppose enteral, suppose a person is in shock, or a person is having GI bleed, when you can't give enteral supplementation, go to IDPN if patient is on dialysis. Otherwise, you have to go to parenteral nutrition. This is the recommendation of the calories, what you are going to give your patient who are hospitalized. So you have to forget that they are on low protein diet if a CKD patient is admitted. Give away. For this dude, when the person is hospitalized, low calorie or low protein restriction just goes in oblivion. Now, what about vitamin C for preventing and treating? Now, vitamin C is available for treating common cold, and it is interesting, and you must know Linus Pauling, who is the basic man behind vitamin C. Mind you, he's important man because he is only two of the person in the history as on today who has got 2 Nobel Prizes. Basically a chemical engineer. We know that vitamin C is an antioxidant, free radical scavenger, and has anti-inflammatory properties. It influences cellular immunity and vascular integrity. Now, vitamin C has been studied that regular intake of vitamin C, if a person is taking, what happens to developing cold or viral infection? Mind you, COVID also is a cold. So large participants in general community, the relative risk if a person is taking regular vitamin C, there is no difference whether he acquires cold or not. However, if a person is under stress, like marathon runners, skiers, soldiers, the risk was much less. So it was recommended. When you talk of duration of cold, in adults, duration of cold got reduced by 8%, and in children by 14% if they were on regular intake of vitamin C. Therapeutic vitamin C they tried in large number of patient episodes of cold, but there was no consistent effect of vitamin C on duration or severity of cold. This is the recent randomized trial which appeared. Now, this is the effect of zinc and vitamin C. So these were 214 patients randomized. 1 is to 1 is to 1 is to 1. 50 received the standard of care. The other group received vitamin C. The third group received zinc. Fourth group received zinc and vitamin C. And unfortunately, you find that there is no difference and all are performing similar. 28-day mortality, our hospitalization is almost similar. So that means the vitamin C or zinc did not do much. This was the second trial which appeared, a pilot trial of high dose vitamin C. They gave 24 gram vitamin C every day, 12 gram in the morning, 12 gram in the evening. So these two groups were given and 56 critically ill COVID-19 patients were recruited, and they wanted to find whether they will require ventilation or go for oxygen support. Unfortunately, again, you see the results are almost similar. So vitamin C is given even in high dose, did not make much difference. So at the moment, the recommendation can be routine vitamin C supplementation is not justified. Regular supplementation trial have shown that vitamin C reduces the duration of cold. So therefore, because it is a cheap drug, supplementation is not difficult. It may be worthwhile for common cold patients to test on individual basis. You may give, but mind you, the dose has to be whatever normally you take, 100 to 200 milligram a day. Coming next to zinc, I have already mentioned it is part of 300 enzymes for practically protein, carbohydrate, energy metabolism, heme biosynthesis, and so many other enzymes. Now, if there is zinc deficiency, by impairing function of neutrophil, NK cells, T and B cells, it will impair non-specific immunity. Hypozincemia is typical in CKD patient, which deteriorates symptoms of RI. Although zinc requirements have not been established in COVID-19 associated AKI, it should be recommended that patients receive their dietary daily requirement of zinc. Now, what is dietary daily requirement? Recommendation RDA is 11 milligram for men and 8 milligram for women. There is insufficient data for COVID-19 treatment guidelines panel to recommend for or against the use of zinc for the treatment of COVID-19. The panel recommends against using zinc supplementation above the recommended dietary allowance for the prevention of COVID-19, except in a clinical trial. It is also known that if zinc given in high doses can cause copper deficiency with subsequent reversible hematological defects or neurological defects. There is some, I must say, a rumor going around that was the zinc also responsible for what Dr. Ashwini Gupta was mentioning about the mucormycosis. Third important study is about the vitamin D. Many studies have shown that vitamin D deficiency is associated with increased susceptibility to viral respiratory infection. The beneficial effect of vitamin D on protective immunity is there. If we go further, if you talk of COVID-19, the effect can be twofold. First, it helps in produces antimicrobial peptide in the respiratory epithelium, which is supported by vitamin D, making infection with virus and progression less likely. That is one benefit. Second, vitamin D might help to reduce the inflammatory response to infection with COVID virus. So the cytokine storm maybe can be reduced. Now, in CKD patients, we know vitamin deficiency has frequently been associated with proteinuria, albuminuria, progression of end-stage kidney failure, etc., etc. Now, let's see. This is what we say. if there is a vitamin D deficiency and COVID-19, there is immune dysregulation, there is increased pro-inflammatory cytokine and decreased chemoattractant, decreased T helper cell. So there is a decreased immune response and severe infection. So therefore, that is a recommendation for vitamin D. Now, what does the literature say? There is no study for COVID, but related studies are early high dose vitamin D3 for critically ill vitamin deficient patients. Now, in this study, which appeared in New England Journal of Medicine, 1,316 patients were randomized. Those with low level received very high doses, 5,40,000. That means we are giving 60,000 capsules. That means 9 capsules. Units of vitamin D were given enterally, and 90-day mortality was studied. They found early administration of high dose did not provide an advantage over placebo for mortality or other non-fatal outcomes. The other study, which said vitamin D supplementation to prevent acute respiratory infection, that if a person is taking regularly, now this was suddenly you gave a bolus of that. Here they found there were a lot of trial, 25 eligible randomized control trial, 11,000 patients. What they find, the protective effect was seen in those receiving daily or weekly vitamin D without additional bonuses. So therefore, vitamin D supplementation is safe and it protected against acute respiratory infection overall. Patients who are vitamin D deficient and those not receiving bolus experienced most benefit. So what we are saying is people who are receiving regularly, whether it was vitamin C or vitamin D, they benefit. Coming to little different aspect to our 3 slides, what about the micronutrient deficiency? We know that 1/3 of the world population has deficiency of micronutrients. And CKD patient, because of protein restriction, phosphate restriction, potassium restriction, poor absorption, there is deficiency of micronutrient. The absorption is also expression of carriers for thiamine, folic acid are low. Dialysis also can remove up to 40% of thiamine diphosphate, and the phosphate binder immunosuppressant further interfere with vitamins. For going by one, vitamin C intradialytic losses can go up to 60% after a dialysis session. Keep in mind, the level of oxalate in dialysis patients are 2-fold higher than normal. And after vitamin D supplementation, it can become 7-fold higher. So therefore, when I said initially, plasma oxalate level more than 50 might lead to tissue accumulation, that's why I said the vitamin C, you should not go overboard. Thiamine, we know about it. Now, B6 pyridoxine, it was deficiency is not observed if a person is taking 50 milligram of this. Folic acid, there is 37% drop in plasma concentration, but if a person is taking 1 milligram a day, deficiency does not appear. Zinc, we have mentioned. Selenium is another important thing. In CKD, the deficiency rises further as selenium is malabsorbed and is lost with dialysis fluid and urine. Selenium deficiency can lead to development of Caisson disease, which is characterized by congestive cardiomyopathy. However, there is no recommendation regarding the routine supplementation. Vitamin A is again a metabolite which helps the immune response, inhibits 17 cell differentiation and reciprocally potentiates the T regulator cell development. This is again helpful. Vitamin E is again thought to have benefit for protecting cell membrane polyunsaturated fatty acid against oxidation, modulates generation of oxygen radical, reactive oxygen species, and impairment of both humoral and cellular immunity has been associated with deficiency of this. Well, there are reports that demonstrate oxidative stress that is present can get suppressed with the help of vitamin C. It seems to have a promising effect in dialysis patients. However, none of these compounds are recommended by PD or HD guidelines. Lastly, quercetin. Quercetin is a plant pigment flavonoid. It has anti-inflammatory, antioxidant, anti-cancer, antiviral, and psychostimulant activity. Now, various viruses, including COVID virus, has been shown to be inhibited by quercetin in lab and animal studies. In the animal model of adenine-induced CKD, treatment with quercetin improved renal function, decreased oxidative stress markers, and reduced serum FG223. So this is another important thing, salt or plant pigment, which is helpful and is anti-inflammatory. Lastly, prebiotics and postbiotics, probiotics and prebiotics. The protein hydrolysates, they increase the barrier function and IgA production. So probiotic bacteria can reduce inflammation with reduction in pro-inflammatory Th1 and 17 cytokine and increasing the anti-inflammatory IL-10 cytokine. Likewise, the prebiotics, these again are found to be helpful. Now, this is a Jason study which came about the fruits, which are the fruits and vegetables, which are the rich source of all these vitamins we are mentioning. This was a study from 11 countries, European countries, a good number of patients, 8,000, median follow-up 2.7 years. It is a dialysis population. They found only 4% of the patients consumed more than 4 servings of fruits and vegetables a day. There were some patients who were taking, what they are finding that fruits and vegetable intake in dialysis patient is low. Higher consumption is related to lower all-cause and non-cardiovascular death. This is what you find, how many helping patients different countries are taking. Possibly Italy or Portugal, they are taking good amount of fruits and vegetable. Some countries are taking pretty less. And this is only to show you that people who are taking fruits and vegetables, there is non-cardiovascular mortality and all-cause mortality is low. So finally, now what is the recommendation for nutrition in COVID times? A good diet rich in fruits and vegetables, rich in vitamin C and other antioxidants is recommended for COVID-19 infected CKD patients. It is prudent that during an active COVID-19 infection, we ensure the mitigation of protein energy wasting risk and immediate correction of protein energy wasting in all patients with kidney disease, including transplant patients. We encourage the guidelines say adequate protein and calorie intake, be it enterally or parentally, so that any occurrence of hypokalemia, hypophosphatemia can be avoided, and the protein energy wasting, sarcopenia, cachexia can be prevented. In the midst of this serious infection, there is no role for delaying nutrition support or low protein, low phosphorus, low potassium regimen if the patient has COVID-19 infection. And lastly, supportive treatments such as nutritional supplements and vitamins could show protective effect by downregulating inflammatory cytokines. Taken together, the current evidence suggests the therapeutic potential of supportive treatments such as nutritional supplements and vitamins against COVID-19 in kidney patients, supplementation of vitamin A, D, E, and several trace elements including zinc, selenium, copper, magnesium, flavonoid, quercetin, and probiotics may be beneficial for both prevention and treatment for viral infection, including COVID-19, and can enhance immunity. As of now, there are no recommendations for supplements. I cannot say what should be taken, how much should be taken. We also have seen that the best benefit is if you have been taking it regularly. However, if a person is taking good fruits and vegetables, he is taking good amount of all these vitamins and minerals. Possibly he may not require much. If we have to give to our patient whatever is the daily recommendation, that is enough to treat our patients. And lastly, the protein and energy they should not be deprived, and it should be given at liberty and appropriate. Thank you very much.